Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Lillie by Maya O'Malley, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. She woke, trembling from the same dream she had experienced nearly every night lately. Only this time it had a unique twist. This time, she survived. It should be getting easier. You would think so at least, but no, how could Naomi erase the horrific images of when Nick had placed her in that dark, distant realm, trapped in the cold, dank earth? In real life, she had survived. Of course she had. She was lying here, snug and safe next to Bryce, who'd slept through this latest nightmare, blissfully unaware of the graphic images that floated so freely in her head. Images that may creep to the recesses of her thoughts at times, but would never truly leave her mind. Maybe the fact that she had lived in this version of the dream meant the nighttime visions would disappear. Poof, gone, just like that. Naomi stifled a bitter laugh. If only. Now she needed to let go. Naomi had her life to get on with, and besides, all of the spirits from her past had been served their justice, received their peaceful endings. So then what was up with this incessant, smothering, recurring nightmare? If only she could get her own blissful ending and remove the horrific memories of her past battle with the spirit of her ex-boyfriend Nick. After all, they had made peace with one another, so the consistent nagging of the dream should be long gone. Hey, Bryce mumbled, pulling Naomi closer. She shut her eyes, attempting to allow only clean, pure thoughts to enter. She focused on him. Her senses basked in Bryce. Just Bryce. He pulled her closer still, gently reaching for her as she touched the rough stubble on his cheek. There. This seemed to be working. Naomi got her reprieve as she drew Bryce's mouth toward hers. Chapter 1. She swept the cobwebs to the side with her dusty fingertips. She brushed her hands along the shiver of goosebumps rushing up and down her arms. Why wouldn't Bryce have mentioned this unique treasure that lay beyond the walls of their house? How could he have possibly forgotten to tell her? Her, of all people. Unless he didn't know. Naomi supposed Bryce could be unaware of the hidden path that wound itself from the bottom floor to the top. She, however, would have scoured every inch of this relic of a home hours upon moving in, which she realized with newfound curiosity that she was only getting around to now. Better late than never. Reaching for her cell phone, Naomi powered it on and scrambled to find the flashlight app. Here we go. This is ridiculously cool. Naomi breathed the words into the empty crevices of the walls. Her eyes widened as she took in the dark, curving stairway with bare walls. The stone and brick-style Dutch colonial was built in the late 1700s. This had to be one of those secret passageways, like the ones Revolutionary War soldiers or runaway slaves must have tucked themselves away in, fearing for their lives as they relied on sheer courage, powerful dreams of a possible future, one far better than what they had experienced, and little else to guide them. Hard to imagine that at one time people had to hide away within these dim, musty walls. Thankfully, there had been brave souls that had assisted these people, giving them a chance at a fresh, new beginning. Naomi reminded herself to stay focused as she recalled the reason she had uncovered this gem in the first place. Soft moaning, or was that whining? But honestly, it could just be her vivid imagination working overtime. The latter was most definitely a possibility. Scratch that, a strong probability. Given Naomi's past encounters, it was no wonder she had ghosts on her mind. Naomi lived, breathed, and slept the paranormal. To her, the unearthly spirits that seemed destined to find her were as natural as breathing. She seemed to possess some kind of magnetic pull that summoned the otherworldly spirits. Problem was, since Naomi's wedding and recent move into Bryce's house, now her own home as well, things had been strangely quiet on the paranormal front. All Naomi had prayed for months prior, when she was knee-deep in ghosts, was peace and quiet. a break from the spirits who so desperately sought her out, begging her to save their souls while swallowing up her energy, focus, and time spent on nurturing her relationship with Bryce. Her only wish now was to settle in with Bryce and her stepdaughter Holly. Tunnel visions with ghosts as her sole focus had made it difficult to practice any sense of normalcy. Aside from the relentless nightmares, Naomi was happy now. She worked from home, writing her novels. A huge perk was that she could be home for Holly when she got off the bus each day after school. Lately, her books had mimicked reality, and the paranormal realm as her real-life focus had been putting unsettled spirits to rest. As a matter of fact, her current work in progress centered around the conflicted spirit of Nick. It was easy to write about her own experiences, even if it brought back all of the turmoil and horror she had experienced while trying to solve the mystery surrounding Nick's demise. Naomi wondered if she would have hit bestseller status had the ghost of Maggie never graced Naomi with her presence. All the pieces of her life with Bryce and Holly had been coming together. Placing her home just down the small dirt road up for sale had been bittersweet. Now, with the move made and the new owner settled in at her old place, it was time to relax and just take a breather. A faint grin played across her face at the thought of her new neighbor. Problem was, now that she had her wish, she found herself overreacting at the slightest movement, the smallest sound. Bryce would laugh at her, of course. He knew, and Naomi all too well, understood that she was closely tied to those spirits that she had helped in the past. He understood that a small part of Naomi almost seemed incomplete without them. So it made sense that she had poked around at the walls, looking for trouble. Nothing seemed out of place or unusual, though, now that she was deep inside the heart of the house. The fact that nothing was amiss didn't mean that Naomi still couldn't enjoy the chance to explore. Coughing at the feel of a tickle of dust in her lungs, Naomi composed herself, then shone the light from her phone toward the ceiling. How many people had traveled these stairs? One? Many? Did they survive? She closed her eyes for the briefest of moments, clearing her mind to open herself up to the space before her and the unknown secrets it held. A sudden wave of sadness hit Naomi. Hard. She easily turned into the emotions of those around her. An empath, it was termed. More like soaked into people and their problems, she figured. This time was no different, even considering that her melancholy was now most likely tied to events from many, many years ago. It didn't matter, though, for time was merely a riddle to solve, another dimension to break through. Naomi had touched several departed souls from the recent past. With a tinge of anticipation, Naomi wondered what it would be like to sync with an ancient soul, if it was possible for her to connect with someone hundreds of years old. With a wide grin, she grasped hold of the thought and quickly turned it to hope. Bryce would be pissed if he knew she lingered within the walls of their home, contemplating the desire to start up trouble once more. Straining to hear even the slightest movement, Naomi grew impatient as she suddenly lost her connection. It was just her now, alone in that dark space. She closed her eyes once more, trying to bring forth the emotions that had come to her so easily moments before. What had hit her earlier now proved elusive. She sighed, but continued up the stairs, despite the chill in the air. There. She had reached the top floor, and if she figured it right, Naomi thought the crawl space that stood before her was most likely on the other side of the wall in the guest bedroom. It was no wonder she had never discovered the passageway, for the broad armoire in the room had done a fine job of covering up this delicious little gem of a secret. The furniture had come with the house when Bryce had been renting it, so it made sense that he never encountered the spot where the passageway came to its end. Pushing with all her strength against the wall, Naomi huffed before wiping the dust from her hands. The wall wouldn't budge. There was nothing else to see, and it was getting late. She would return another time. She forced her mind from the notion of needy ancient spirits, knowing that Bryce and Holly were expecting her downstairs. Her own footsteps were the only sound as Naomi traveled down to the bottom floor. A faint slice of light from the small doorway below allowed Naomi to swiftly work her way down. The The familiar blur of black fur swept past the light as Zelda, Naomi's pitch-black cat, announced her presence with a shrill cry. A chill swept over Naomi as things began to happen all at once. She knew Zelda all too well, and the sadness that touched her before came back with a punch. Naomi gasped for air and bent down to compose herself as the cat's shrieks grew louder. Zelda had been known to spook, but not easily. Like Naomi, the cat also had plenty of experience with spirits, nearly as much as she herself had. Naomi actually considered her feline to be an expert of sorts when it came to detecting spirits. Imagine that. Naomi took in a fresh gulp of air and braced herself. Not knowing what she would find when she spun her head around, she swallowed hard, her eyes open wide. Nothing. Nothing but deafening silence hit Naomi's sensitive ears. This spirit seemed to slam her hard and fast with emotion and then pull back just as quickly, almost as if he or she were playing with her. Tricks of the mind. All was quiet now, but if she concentrated just a bit more, she was sure she would uncover the reason for Zelda's behavior. Concentrate. Concentrate. Yes, there it was. This time she couldn't mistake the sound. Someone or something wept, the faint moans reaching Naomi softly in the diminishing light. Naomi tuned into the motion, attempting to pinpoint the source. Female. Yes, this appeared to be a female voice, but there was something different than what she was accustomed to. Something wasn't fitting. It was about the tone, the pitch of the cries. Naomi covered her ears with trembling hands, and against her will, she felt herself sucked into a place far worse than what she had ever experienced before. She heard the continued weeping, closing her eyes. She soon discovered that there was an emotion far worse than fear. It was sorrow. Naomi opened her eyes briefly because the images in her own head were intolerable, but closed them once more because she needed to be certain. Needed to be sure the familiar face was who or what she thought it was. No. But there was no denying what faced her, occupying not just her mind, but every inch of her body. Naomi stood face to face with the image of her childhood dreams and nightmares. How she'd blocked this out, she didn't know, for now she stood before the nagging dark soul of a child she had met many, many times before. Naomi placed a hand on her thumping chest. The girl conjured up fear with every distant memory filtering through her mind. Like playing cards being flipped, each second revealed a new source of terror. No one had believed her as a child when she thought this young girl was her imaginary friend. And no one had believed her when the same girl haunted her dreams until just before adolescence. Eventually, the girl had seemed to lose interest in taunting Naomi, begging her to perform the naughtiest of tasks, all of which Naomi firmly stood her ground against. What kind of child would ask another to trip her own mother, say mean-spirited comments to her parents? Naomi hadn't questioned her disappearance, for she had only been relieved at the silence that the child's absence had left. She had assumed the spirit had moved on to torture another. She hadn't counted on the fact that perhaps the child hadn't given up on her at all. Maybe she was just biding her time, waiting all these years for just the right time to pounce again. This time, perhaps with more ammunition. She had forgotten all about her. Her mind had protected a young Naomi from the horror. But unfortunately, Naomi now remembered. She remembered every last detail. And with that, she also knew why she had chosen to forget.